Welcome to this week's Zacuto Live. Today we're talking about the pros and cons of going to film school or not going to film school. We have a great panel, so let's meet them. Eddie Schneider, DP Director, Daniel Herman, DP, Jens, my DP for 34 years, and me, Director Producer. You can read everybody's bio in the video description. Make sure to subscribe to Zacuto's YouTube channel for future content. Let's begin. Daniel, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I should say Daniel's my cousin, and he went to AFI and
Columbia College.
And Columbia College.
As I did. Do we want to sort of figure out where everybody's position is first to get into that?
Yeah, let's go around the table. Yeah. Because Eddie has actually no idea what we're talking about today. We brought him on this morning, and he's just like, what are we talking about?
That'll be fun.
Okay, so I have been in production for 35 or more years. I've probably done close to 1,000 projects. No film school, man. Learned it all on my own and from you. Mm-hmm. How about you?
Well, I'll say that I'm going to take the pro film school side, and I'll get into the reasons why in a little bit, but there's a lot to be learned there, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So I'm taking the pro film school side. What about Eddie? Eddie, you there?
Yes, I'm breaking up a bit, but I'll move from here. I'll go on the outside. I'm in a bar. So
Love
actually, half an hour ago, Steve called, say, you're up. I said, I'm driving. He said, listen, we go live in 30 minutes. I said, oh my God, my phone is like 12%. And what do I do? He says, come on, you'll figure it out. And so I pull over, I go into a bar, I find a friend, I tell him, help me out. He says, okay, I have my laptop with me, and here I am. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yeah, you look great. It's unbelievable because Eddie will find some way to create amazing drama and camera movement.
Right.
You are the first person that actually is doing a moving shot.
A Skype camera move.
as his opening scene.
Right.
So do you know what we're talking about today?
Yes, I got it. The pros and cons of film school. Whew, that's a tough one.
Did you go to film school?
I didn't.
Cool.
I didn't, but I regret. I wish I would.
Wow.
Would have.
What the hell for? You are like incredible, man. Everything you do is amazing.
Thank you, Steve. That means a lot to me, especially coming from you.
But why do you feel like you want to go to film school? You're already working in the biz. I don't quite get it.
That's true. But I mean, I wish I went, because when I was young, I didn't know what my path was in life. And I wish I knew back then what I will do later on. And then I would have gone to film school. And I think it's good to have a theoretical basis of what you're doing. But I learned it on my way, as you did, so just by doing it.
There's something great to do in that. I forgot to introduce Rachel. Let's bring Rachel up and tell us how this is all going to work today.
Hi, everybody. For the record, I have a theatrical directing degree. I don't even have a film school degree, but life continues, so there you go. I am the marketing director here at Zacuto. I will be following the chat as usual, and I will pass your questions along to our guests. So if you have any questions, just type them into the comments, and I will pass them along. Since today's show is about film school, we've partnered with the folks at MZ, who offer online education for creatives to get you $100 off their memberships. I'm going to put the details in the chat in just a minute. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And you guys keep going. You can have a lot to talk about today.
Okay, we're back. Now, I'm just going to let the control room know that I did not hear Rachel.
Yeah, I couldn't hear her.
Did any of you guys hear Rachel?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
Oh, great. Okay,
Loud and clear.
So control room, just make it so that Jens and I can hear Rachel. Daniel, let's talk about, you came to Chicago here and you went to Columbia College. What was that all about?
Yeah, I went to Columbia. Columbia was a really interesting program at the time that I went. I'm not sure what it's like now. But the nice thing about Columbia is that it was a really technical program. So where some people might go to film school, where some people might just start working in the industry and kind of get hands-on that way, Columbia College really let you get involved with the equipment hands-on kind of right away. And then after that, I went to Los Angeles and went to AFI. So AFI, at the time that I went to AFI, was, it was a nice compliment to Columbia because it was more of a theoretical program. I think it's gotten probably more technical now, but they kind of went well hand in hand. So that was my film school background.
All right, Jens, you went to Columbia College.
Yeah, so let me tell you why I think film school is good. And again, it's not for everyone, okay? But I decided that I wanted to go to film school because, especially to Columbia, because I knew that I would be able to dive right in and get hands-on. And I needed to kind of explore different areas to kind of see what direction I wanted to go in. Film school can give that to you, maybe a little easier than if you're trying to figure that out on your own. But I think that you probably already knew what you wanted to do, so that path was easier for you. Most people might not know the direction and need to be exposed to things like that, many things, plus all the resources there. I mean, your teachers are probably working industry people or had been. All the camera equipment that I got a hold of, and then just all the other people I met. I mean, if it wasn't for Columbia, I would never have met you, because,
yeah, wow.
I mean, think about that. That was part of the networking, and well, actually, meeting you was because I needed to finish a project, and I went outside the school so I could finish it on time, because, again, if you're not early, you're late, in my opinion. So, and that's how I met you.
Okay, well, I'm very glad that you met me. So for that fact, because, I mean, we've been doing stuff together for 35 years almost.
But many other people I've met too, and that all works its way down and benefits you later in your career. I mean, I even met Janusz and worked with him a little bit at Columbia.
Yeah, well, so I sort of
Can I piggyback on something Jens just said, though?
Go ahead.
So, like what he was, I 100% agree with. Film school allows you to kind of experience a bunch of different things. Steve, I don't know if you remember this, but when I started at Columbia, I thought I wanted to be an editor. But because there was a bunch of prerequisites, I couldn't take any editing classes, and I had to do some lighting classes first. And that became really passionate about it. Once I finally got around to being able to take some editing classes, I realized that, that actually wasn't what I wanted to do. So had I not been exposed to that through film school, I would have probably had to take an internship at Post House, then kind of work your way up there until you can kind of get hands-on. And it would have taken a lot longer. So I agree with Jens on that point.
Well, that's kind of interesting, because to me, I come, well, Daniel, you know what I come from, my background, but I come from a sort of very entrepreneurial background. My grandfather, my father, everyone was kind of an entrepreneur. So I never really even envisioned film school. To me, there's sort of these two paths. One is you build a production company and you figure out, I figured out what I excelled at. I was involved in editing and then directing and a little now more producing even. Or you go this sort of film school craft system where you kind of start at the bottom and you work your way up. I don't want to say the Roger Corman way, but Daniel, you did do that, right?
I went to film school, and then, you kind of have to find your way afterwards. So, but to your point, I don't think that there are these kind of two paths, right? You either do it on your own, or you kind of, build a network through a film program or something like that. I think one of the big failings of film school is that they don't teach you that entrepreneur part, because it doesn't matter how great you are. Once you leave film school, you need to be a business person as well. And so I think that's one of those things that kind of takes some people some time to kind of figure out, and then kind of build that network that way.
Or find a partner that is that business side. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the other thing.
Like us, pretty much.
Yeah.
And,
So you guys are a good complement to each other.
Well, that's a great point, because, and I don't think that's exclusive to film school. I mean, every business you're in, you have to sell yourself. It's just that simple. Now, I want to talk to Eddie a little bit, because there is a certain magic to this exploring and learning on your own. And I know that Eddie is that kind of person, because I've now known you for like a decade. And every time some new little interesting invention comes out, you're there. You're the first person there. I always say if it's new and dumb, I'm into it.
Yeah, I'm a 40-year-old kid, and I like to fool around and play and just take advantage of the great times we live in. So that's true.
Okay, so, but you say that you wish you had gone to film school. You are that entrepreneurial guy I'm talking about. You've built this studio, you have equipment, you're doing productions, and you're doing it in a spot where there's not like
A lot of support.
tons of production work. I mean, I shouldn't say that because I don't know what I'm talking about, but we need to tell people that you live in Transylvania, and you need to tell them where that is, because nobody even gets where Transylvania is.
That actually exists, not only in Dracula movies. So,
So where are you right now?
And where are your fangs?
it's not a full moon tonight, so
And
you're
you're in
getting away
sunlight.
with.
No, but where
Yeah.
are you literally
So-
right now?
Transylvania is right in the center of Romania. That's in Eastern Europe. And that's where I was born. I'm a German ethnic from here because there was a German population since the Middle Ages. That's why my name is Schneider. And I grew up in Hamburg, Germany. So I left Romania during the times of communism. And I was always passionate about music in the first place. And after I graduated university, I became a music producer. I ran my own home studio, let's put it this way. And then I decided to come back to Romania from Western Europe, from Germany and France, where I lived. And I just founded my own music studio. At the beginning, I did only music, which was about 60 albums for all major artists in this country. And then there was a huge demand for music videos by the record companies I was working for, and that's how I bumped into the visual stuff. First
Great.
by doing only music videos, and then quickly switching to corporate stuff and TV commercials, all kinds of stuff, automotive things. I ended up doing 9 jobs for Porsche, Eastern Europe, which is not a bad thing. And so I had always to be on the cutting edge of technology and innovation and get the best bang out what's possible.
Well, that's kind of what you have to do. I want to kind of shift the conversation a minute here and talk about something that you and I have talked about a lot, which is the film school. You know, when you went to film school, there were like a few film schools.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's film. Everyone wants to go to film school. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
movies. I want to be a photographer.
I
want
call
to
it
be a
selling the
filmmaker.
dream. They are in the business of selling that dream, which if we go by the statistics, it's pretty improbable that everybody who graduates film school will make it in the higher echelons of the business.
I'm going to give you that statistic right now.
Okay, I knew you would.
5% of the people that graduate from film school end up working in the film business more than 5 years. And when I call film business, that could mean working for B&H, it could mean working for Canon or ICANN or any one of these companies. It doesn't necessarily mean you're in production.
Right.
So it's kind of like the film festival thing. It's like, you know, it's not that hard to get 8 million laurel leaves on your movie because there's like 9 billion film festivals, and they basically just turn film festivals and film schools into a business of doing exactly what you're talking about, the American Idol, selling the dream.
You have to know going into it, and the film schools aren't going to say this, but that you have to use it in a practical sense and know that you might not end up at the top of the game, but maybe always have that in the back of your head. Get into some of these other types of jobs, like we've talked about many times. There's so many companies out there that can benefit from just having an IT cameraman kind of multi-purpose guy in their small business to raise their web presence and all that. I mean, that's one way to start, or the wedding business, like you did.
Yeah.
That's one way to get into it, and you could always have that goal in the back of your mind, and maybe you end up meeting somebody and get there that route. You know, there's a billion ways to get there if you're really driven.
Daniel, let's talk about your route, because you started out as an independent contractor, and that's a tough game.
Yeah, you know, in Chicago, after I graduated Columbia, I joined the union and was working in lighting. Then after finishing AFI, I joined 600, you know, the Camera Guild. So yeah, working as a freelancer is definitely tough. And kind of to what you guys were talking about before, as far as how hard it is to make it. If you look at how many positions there are on set, you know, for a DP, there's just one DP on set. So if you're looking to work in lighting or art department or something like that, where there's like a lot of positions to fill, it's a little bit easier to kind of move from job to job. But yeah, I worked as I was freelance for I don't know, 13, 14 years, and then now I am the director of photography at an advertising agency out here in Atlanta. So I've moved around a little bit, and that's kind of one of the nice things about this job, is that you can move around. You don't necessarily have to be in one place. So, and kind of what you guys were saying before, as far as kind of find your niche, there's a lot of different paths other than I'm going to be a feature film director of photography. So if you're open to things and experiences, then there's a lot of room for success.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that feature film photography thing. I tell people, Hollywood puts out 165 pictures a year, okay? That's going to be really hard to get in that, okay? And 99% of those are Hollywood movies, and they're, okay, so we're just going to let that be.
The numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting story. And I'll never forget, this happened about 10 years ago. Girl calls me up on the phone. She says, I have a master's degree from NYU. And I said, oh, okay, that's nice. I said, I need to see your reel because I don't particularly care where you went. It doesn't, when you get out of school, it's irrelevant whether you went to school or didn't go to school because it's all based on your reel. And I said, well, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to direct. And I said, well, what am I going to do?
Because you were the director, yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that I think that young people need to know that you may need to start, as a best boy if you're lucky, and then maybe become a grip if you're lucky, and then maybe become a gaffer's assistant, and an electrician's assistant, a gaffer, and you move your way up. It's what we call the craft system,
Right. It gets back to what Daniel was saying as well before, that the schools are not doing a good job at sort of prepping you for that when you get out of school, you might have to start down at the bottom again and work your way up. You know what you know, but they don't,
I love what Daniel said.
There's
only one DP. There are a lot of people on those film sets, but there's only one director and one DP.
Right.
And after I got out of AFI, I saw a lot where people would have to kind of do the jobs that they were doing before they got into AFI just to make some money, and then kind of build their contacts and work on their reel and stuff like that, and then slowly transition. There's never, film school is definitely not like a light bulb moment where you walk out and then all of a sudden you're doing the projects you want to do. I think that happens for very few people, and it's going to just be like any industry, like, sports and stuff like that. There's very few people who are successful in that, first year they get drafted. So
film school is not a job placement agency. You still got to work your ass off to get that afterward. Do you want to? What were you going to say, Steve? Do you want to shift the conversation? I have something that I want to get into, but
okay, yeah. But on that point, these film schools, and I'm speaking to them, and I know that Flashpoint here in Chicago is actually doing this, where they do have an outplacement type of program, because often we're looking for people here at Zacuto and we can never find anybody. That's the amazing thing. And
they want to be the director from the get-go.
Yeah, we have people that we're looking for, assistant editors. Sometimes we're looking for somebody to do B-roll photography or B-roll video, and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. Well, maybe that's the case. What did you want to talk about?
Well, something that really film schools are now competing against, and what we didn't have the benefit of, is the internet. There's a lot you can learn on the internet now, and so that is, that is a way you can maybe not have to go to film school if you can't afford it. But there's a caveat there. There's a lot of crap on the internet too, so you got to be careful who you're listening to and what path that takes you down. Just like with anything on the internet, But these days, boy, it makes me wonder if I would have spent the money to go to film school because of all the knowledge that's on the internet.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? I think I still would have, because I like the structure there, and I like the access to equipment, and talking to industry professionals. The internet, you don't always know what you're getting.
There is one thing that I want to mention, is that so you and I have done like literally 1,000 projects together, okay? And we do this sort of post-mortem after projects where we go, okay, what did we learn here? And we've sat with people like, I remember we were sitting with, Steve Goldblatt and Rodney and a bunch of people, and we were like, do you, after every single project, sit around and go, oh my God, what just totally got fucked up? And what can we learn? And I remember Stephen Goldblatt one time saying to me, he goes, oh God, every single film I do, I don't care how many I do, I learn stuff. And so, you know, you're learning things in school, but at a certain point, you get to the experience trumps what you learned at school. And I'm only working off experience at this point. And so are you.
Yeah, no, I mean, the experience does trump like most other things. You have, and but film school gave me some of that experience. I was able to go on some major internships, like on The Untouchables and things like that. And I learned things you could never learn from a book or from the internet, even though the internet was not there at the time. But the whole politics of ethics and etiquette that happens on a set, like a major set like that at the time, that you can't really learn in film school that easy. You got to be in the shit.
Yeah, but I do want people.
And to what,
yeah, go on.
To what Jens was saying, though, kind of a little bit ago, as far as like, would he have gone to film school, paid the money to go to film school? I think the thing that people do need to understand is, so you go to film school, it costs a certain amount of money. That's going to affect your the choices that you can make and the jobs that you can take. Because if you have a ton of student debt, you may need to take work that you might not be interested in just to pay that student debt back. So you don't necessarily have the freedom. So you kind of have to weigh everything when you're making that decision.
See, I would say,
well, it
to
depends
his
on that
point,
work.
Yeah, I would say there is no work that you shouldn't take, and that's something.
Well, he meant like a barista or something.
Oh, I got it. But
yeah, but take the lower jobs in the business, because you'll still learn stuff. If you can.
Remember, we were trying to figure out.
I guess no. Well, I guess what I'm saying is like, you may be going down a career path as far as like, let's say you want to just do commercials, but you're having to do certain types that are totally outside of that genre. Yes, you may still learn stuff from that, but it's not going to help you build your reel to get to the path that you want to go to. And the more you do a certain thing, the more you're going to be known as the guy that does that thing or the girl that does that thing.
Yeah, I know you say that all the time.
So it's going to be a lot harder.
That was more true in our day. It's less true now.
I know. Me and him have had this conversation a million times, and it's like, we'll fight on that one, but that's cool. But let me ask you. Go on.
You can learn something from everything that you work on. You can definitely learn something, take something away. Whether it has nothing, it could be like what Jens was talking about, where just about the politics of being on set and the politics of working with a producer or a director or whatever, making sure everybody's happy. That's an invaluable thing. That might not be directly related to how you're going to light a scene. I
hear you, but I still go back to the fact that doing 200 or more weddings is the most valuable. I mean, we've done 1,000 productions. I still go back to have done 200 weddings is the most valuable experience I ever had, because it's a one-take environment, exactly like what we're doing right now. And there is no going back. The pressure is high. And just every time you put a camera in your hand and are trying to complete anything, it's an experience that I can't even describe.
Which you should be doing in film school as well. You know what I'm saying? You should be doing projects, and we were trying to get Janusz on the show. At Columbia, he took every little project he could for anybody in film school, to gain that experience. And it really served him well, as we see.
Exactly. Now. Daniel, I told you on the phone that we tried to get Janusz Kaminski on the show today, and unfortunately he was going to do it, but he had a film prep. And but that's true. Who was it that we were talking about the other day that told us?
Alan Thatcher?
Yeah, Alan Thatcher. We interviewed him, and he told us this story, that Janusz would go on any single film project that he could get on at Columbia, so long as that he could do one thing that was his thing. And like one of the projects, he said he had to have a dolly, and he paid for the dolly himself. Right. And in the other one, he wanted to have a jib, and he paid for the jib himself.
I benefited from one of those. I was his Steadicam operator on Emma, which was one of some girls' thesis project there. So
I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty common. I mean, my experience. When you're starting out and you're like, oh well, I want to try these lenses out on this production, and then you try and find ways to negotiate that to work, whether that's, reducing, like not charging for a prep day or something like that. Or, you definitely, especially if you're doing, in your example, 200 weddings, you're going to want to try new stuff every time, because if you're not really kind of expanding and growing. Exactly. Michael Goy said a great thing once, which has stuck with me, which is, he'll walk into a room and, he already has an instinct on how he wants to light it. So he puts that to the side because he basically says he's already done that before. And then how else can he do it? And so to expand that to your wedding example, like you can hone your craft at doing anything as long as you're not, basically plagiarizing yourself every time.
That's such a great point, because
we've got a Steve. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry.
It ended up working. No, it's okay. Just wanted to check. We do have a comment here on from Trevor Pinocchi, who says you want to be known as the guy who's working and not the guy who isn't. You've got to take what you can to stay active. And I love what you were saying, Daniel, about no matter what you're doing, as long as you're testing yourself, it's okay to do 200 weddings or 500 of this. You've just got to
I love you,
learn
Trevor. Keep saying stuff like that.
Experience trumps everything.
It does.
But you start in film school getting experience, and building a network. So I think there's a lot of value there, as long as you don't get sucked into that dream that a lot of these film schools are selling, that you're going to be the Hollywood director. You got to be realistic.
You're never going to get worse from working. Eddie, here's the man that has tried everything new.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this video you did with the girl with the furry boots, and you had them dancing. This was a million years ago.
Yeah, we tried green screen in days of DV. So we shot the crazy CGI music video on this crappy codec, and it worked in the end.
Can I ask you a question, Eddie? Without the internet, though, where do you think you'd be right now?
That's a good question. The internet means a lot. So I don't think I would have all the customers I have today, and so many people who follow me and look up to what I do without the internet. That's for sure.
But in terms of your education, how much did that play into it? Because me and Steve are speaking, and Daniel are speaking from a different world where the internet really was not a source of learning as it is now,
I can say I grew up with the internet for what I do, and I basically started to do what I do now when the internet arrived in Romania. So I grew up with it, and I took full advantage of it.
Well, but Eddie, when we first met, the being able to stream HD was just getting started. Remember 2008? When did I first meet you?
Yeah, 2008.
Okay, that's when we did our very first show. So really, at that point, it was still DVD. Before you could really put something on the internet and make it go.
Right. Interesting.
Right.
So.
Hey guys, I've got an interesting question here. This is Zaynin Lindsay, and he says, I'm a student and freelance camera operator in AC. Can you maybe explain the process or experience of transitioning from a student mentality to a working professional?
Wow, tough question. That is a tough question. I'm going to let Daniel take a crack at that because you've been there.
Yeah, I don't think it, I guess I never really saw that there was like this switch that had to be flipped. It's this thing that happens when you start to book more work. So, I guess my question to him would be, what is his idea of a student or her? What is their idea of a student mentality? Because at a certain point, and I'm sure Eddie can attest to this, you're always going to need to be successful. You're always going to need to have a student mentality, and that you're going to always figure out a way to get it done. And if the budget's not there, then you'll figure out a way to get it done within the budget. And that's kind of, that was what I was dealing with in film school. So I don't know exactly what they're talking about the student mentality. I think the thing that doesn't happen when you're a student is you don't get paid.
Rachel,
there's a big transition there.
Why don't you see if you can get a clarification and a new comment from them? Because
Sure.
I'm interpreting it as, how do I break into the craft system and work my way up?
I don't know if I interpret it that way, but maybe.
All right.
But the one thing, the school mentality, there you're sort of protected. You know, you can fail and nothing really happens. In the real world, you got to be prepared for getting fired if nobody, you know, liked what you did or whatever. So there's a little bit of that reality check there.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if that's what they were referring to.
In your world, but in my world as a owner of a production company, when we failed, I had to have that money to eat that failure.
Yes.
So
But as a freelancer, you know, I don't know that that's the case. But yeah, as a production company, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, we definitely have to make this distinction of, you know, do I want to be a freelancer and go that route, or do I want to be a production company and go that route, or do I want to be in the corporate space like Daniel's doing currently and go that route? Eddie is he's essentially owns a production company.
So, so we know what Eddie, that he would have liked to have gone to film school. Daniel, would you have done both Columbia and AFI now in hindsight?
That's a good question. Well, just to back up, yeah, I'm not necessarily in the corporate space. I'm working for an ad agency. So it's a little bit different. I guess when I hear corporate, I think of something a little bit different.
Sorry.
So we're still doing commercials and stuff like that. But would I do film school again? Yeah, I mean, look, it was film school to me. A lot of it is about kind of what Jens you're talking about, which is like making those contacts. So, you know, you can do that a bunch of different ways. You can just do that through working, but you know, I wouldn't change anything because who knows how my life would have turned out. So, yeah, I would still do it again.
So the theoretical schooling that you got from AFI, what about that? Do you think you could have lived without that?
Well, he met his wife at
no,
AFI, so he's
I know,
had to have gone.
I'm talking more on the education side. No, of course you don't want to change history.
Because I think that honestly, I think that theoretical part, from my perspective, is what that I carry that regardless of whatever job I'm doing. You know, whether it's, you know, shooting something or doing photos or whatever. Like it's always, and that's the piece that, like, you can read about that in books and stuff like that, but it doesn't really get hammered home until you're having those discussions and watching your film, your crappy student, you know, thesis film, and, you know, people are kind of tearing it apart about, like, why did you choose to do this, and why is the lighting like this, and, you know, those, you know, everything should be motivated by the story. And I don't think that whether it's long form or short form or advertising, like, you carry that throughout it all, because at the end of the day, it's all storytelling, or at least you hope it is.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And actually, you took offense to something I said there, which is a great point, because it is all storytelling. And when I said he's in the corporate space, he's like, "Whoa, I'm in the ad space, man." and I'm like, okay. Jens and I did 20 years in the corporate space, and fashion videos and little corporate documentaries. We were telling stories, and we were busting our ass to come out with really clever, interesting ways to tell those stories, and I think we did a good job.
Almost, Daniel, I have to say almost harder, because these corporate clients don't understand it as well as the ad agencies, I think, about how to tell a story, you know what I mean? And you're button heads polishing a turd, as we always used to say.
Yeah, right, I'm gonna slam him right now. We were making 15-minute videos on the history of on the history of Jim Beam brands, and you're making a 30-second story. So you take it how you want, but the point is, there is no insulting work. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, right.
It's all storytelling, like he said. Telling a story in 30 seconds is tough. I give him that. We got to tell stories in minutes, which is almost
about a bolt or something. I mean, you know.
Yeah, well, whatever. But the point is, in some ways, that's difficult too.
Yeah.
But you know, we love telling those stories about, you know, the history of Firestone and Jim Beam and all these types of great people in history. It was kind of wonderful, actually, you know, and we got paid good money for it.
Yeah.
Eddie, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing. What kinds of projects are you working on now?
So right now I'm setting up a local online TV station, which many people say it's not going to work because people are not really interested in local stories and stuff, and I'm convinced of the contrary, and I want to give it a shot. So it's going to be about local interest topics, but streaming online, visible in the entire world. And I want to see what television taste. I did cinematography and documentary shooting and stuff like that. I want to see what television is like. I never worked at TV.
That's interesting because that's a concept that we're kind of dabbling with right now, which we call hyper-local, which is you can still you can still use the internet to tell a local story because those people are there. It doesn't necessarily appeal to an international audience. And basically, we're going to be using these live studios for corporations to tell their stories to their that they need to put out in the world, so that when people search certain topics, they come up, and then they can watch these live shows. The interesting thing about the live market that I'm excited about is that this thing is done when we say we're done. It's edited, it's online, it has comments.
Low cost for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the cool thing, the interaction. So people can actually not only watch, be passive, they can participate. That's a great, amazing thing.
That is a new thing. It's like, I try to explain it to people. I say, well, it's like CNN if you can call into CNN and tell them how you feel.
If they're watching now, they're experiencing it.
Exactly.
Because, Rachel, maybe even you have somebody that's got a question again, or...
What do you got, Rachel?
Actually, just this second, Zaynan just responded about the student mentality question and said the student mentality as in someone who relies heavily on their education as opposed to professionals who rely on their experiences on set.
That's just time.
But that education is their experience, yeah.
Yeah, you got to get out there. I mean, it's a combination. In school, you got to start to try to get experience outside of school and learn from those professionals. You know, you can't just be in a classroom environment, period, and expect to go out there and get a job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all experience. I mean, somebody the other day, you know, I mean, I don't want to say that I'm 56 years old, but I'm
too late.
I'm 56 years old, but somebody the other day was saying, "Oh, I don't talk to people that don't have a master's degree." And this was somebody. I mean, I'm like, okay,
in this business?
No, that wasn't in this business. It was just in life, and I was like, okay, wow, that's a little superficial. And secondly, you're 50 some odd years old, and you're talking about shit that happened 40 years ago. I'm like, I gotta believe you've had some experience since then. Okay, so again, it's work, man. Work, 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 work. Get experience and use your school for as a launch board to maybe bypass some of the mistakes that you have to make, but don't be afraid to make mistakes because like you and I say, we don't learn from our victories, man. We've had a lot of nice victories, and that's terrific, but we've had some colossal failures, and that's what we learn from.
You learn more from that almost.
Yeah.
There's one other little thing that it's not film school per se, but I went to these Maine workshops, which were fantastic. They were literally workshops, and I got to do classes with Ira Tiffin and Mr. Steadicam, Garrett Brown. I mean, the big guys.
And Garrett's going to be on one of our shows, so everybody stay tuned.
There's a little teaser.
We're going to have a one-on-one with Garrett.
But you talk about like just sort of getting an injection of right to the top there and getting some of their experience. Workshops are another way of doing that, the high quality ones. So
yeah,
it's just another thing outside of film school that you could do.
I personally would go that route versus film school because, like you said, you are working hands-on. I remember when you did that workshop and you were just like, holy crap, this was amazing. Daniel.
Guys, we've got we've got a question here from Raham, which is kind of interesting. It says, "Is film school enrollment increasing or decreasing as of present day?" Which I know you might not know the specifics, but he says, "Is it going to die? What needs to change?"
Oh, it's increasing.
It seems most people regret film school, or it was very much lacking, which is interesting because, I mean, even Edie, you said that you regret not going to film school, so a lot of you guys seem to have an opposite opinion.
Eddie?
Yep.
Did you hear the question?
Not entirely. I had some breakup.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. The question was, it seems that most people regret film school or that it was very lacking, whereas you seem to feel the opposite way, that you wish you had gone to film school.
Well,
we stumped
them. It can go both ways. Yeah, it depends.
I mean, it may
for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna slam here because I know a lot of people who I've talked to that regret going to film school. They're like, the instructors weren't that great. Because I mean, if they are that great, I'm just, I'm being nasty here. They would really be working in the film space. It's those that can't teach. Again, I don't want people to start sending me emails that I'm a jerk, because I get those anyways. But the point is, I mean, it is a business. Let's get right down to it. And there are far too many people. I mean, let's go back 30 some odd years ago when we were young, and there weren't so many people that were wanting to be in these industries. Now people are sitting back going, you know what do I want to do with my life? And they're like, I love movies, I love photography, I love this and that. But there just aren't enough jobs for 165 pictures a year. Now I will say that the whole interesting nature of how television is changing is opening up enormous amounts of doors for new jobs, such as Netflix and Amazon, and go.
That doesn't mean, though, that all these schools that have jumped into this game are quality schools either. That could be part of what's going on there. You got to choose your school carefully, and then let's say you were even in a good school, you then have to still apply that. So if you're a person that's, not, and I'm not saying that they are, but if you're somebody that, is not a go-getter, especially with the, the lack of jobs in that industry, you might not make it, and then you might have a bad taste in your mouth about film school too. So
okay, I'm going to wrap this up. I wanted to go to you, Daniel.
So two things, though. There obviously with online content, there's a lot more things being made, but as a director of photography, you don't really age out of that role. So a lot of people, there may be more work, but there's already a lot of people that are capable of doing that work. And the budgets are good enough, and people, a lot of it's union stuff. So, it pays people's benefits. So a guy who may have done, theatrical features might be interested in doing some Netflix, Amazon content. Because it's, the checks still cash and the projects are interesting and they have good stories. And, so while things are changing in that, that realm, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's more jobs available to you right out of school.
Wow, second slight, man. Second slight. He just put TV under features.
No, it's all to me, it's all the same. Like the Netflix. I'm just saying.
It's
no different.
You said if you can't get a feature, you may take a Netflix job. You want to know something? I'd rather take a Netflix job because
I'm saying some of these people might be, like you look at all this great stuff on Netflix. Like there are guys who I'm saying that 15 years ago who may have just worked in features are now saying, oh, that Netflix content now, that TV content is great. Like I want to do that.
Yeah, Steve.
I think the other thing though.
Go on.
Yeah, the other thing too was like the Rockport, Maine workshops that was going on. I'm not familiar with them now, but I know that was something that I looked at and something Jens and I discussed a long time ago. So from my understanding though, the one thing, you learn some technical stuff, but the one thing that you wouldn't walk out of there with is basically director producer contacts. So as a director of photography, when you're in school, there's all these people in different concentrations. And you hope to kind of nurture those relationships for future work and kind of leverage that. Because at the end of the day, you could have a great reel, but if you don't have great relationships with your producers and directors, then you're not necessarily going to get hired to work. And that's one of the pluses of kind of being in that fishbowl film school environment.
Well, okay, so you went to essentially the best master's program in the world there, and how did that work out for you?
So on the flip side of that coin is like it could potentially be a crapshoot because it depends on who's in your class, or the class above you or the class below you. So that's kind of where people kind of hang the, like the alumni legacy thing on and try and make connections that way. When everybody's starting out, they're all trying to find how are they connected to certain people. And so, it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. But if you think about the alternative, which probably costs a lot less money, the alternative being you show up in Los Angeles or whatever city you want to work in and just start working on set and trying to meet people. It's probably a lot harder to meet directors and producers that are already working that way.
Eddie, you heard all this. Do you still want to go to film school?
No, but I agree with Daniel. That's true. So the connections you make in film, they are they mean a lot for career. But yeah,
Okay.
works
Rachel?
either way. There are pluses and cons for everything.
Rachel.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And a big thank you to ICANN, who provide all of the lighting for the show. We are excited to offer you $100 off any annual membership with our friends at MZ if you would like to continue your education online. They are the leading online platform for you to develop and master the craft of filmmaking and its various disciplines. Their pro membership gives you access to over 160 hours of education that goes beyond traditional film schools. You can use the code Zacuto100 at checkout to get your discount. The info is in the chat. I'll update the video description in the link as soon as the show is over. Next week's show is going to be all about HDR with our guest host, Gary Adcock, and we'll have reps from Canon and Dolby and Flanders Scientific as well. We'll be taking all your technical questions during the show. It should be a lot of fun. Hit subscribe to get a reminder about upcoming episodes, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.